My initial thoughts about stealth in Crimson Desert was that it was meh. That it's pretty bare bones and not worth to really rely on as a playstyle. And this remains true when we consider the design philosophy of the game. But I have to admit that after over 200 hours in Crimson Desert, the stealth experience wasn't really that bad. Especially once you get access to certain tools and skills like the wind element and sleep arrows. And so as some sort of amendment to my first video on Crimson Desert Stealth, I want to talk about everything I learned about stealth in Crimson Desert after 220 hours. Being able to play as a stealth assassin in any game would rely heavily on enemy AI. If enemies have telepathy and 360 FOVs, stealth will probably be a fleeting dream. Thankfully, in Crimson Desert, enemies only have like an 80-degree FOV, and telepathy only applies to a certain vicinity. The 80-degree FOV allows us to navigate around enemies and even groups of enemies. Then crouching while near enemies will show their vision cones, making it easier to keep your distance. When an enemy spots you, nearby enemies will also be aware of your location. However, if you're trying to liberate large areas, you'll notice that even when you're detected, enemies in the deeper areas or around 200 or 300 meters will remain unaware of your presence. This means that if you're careful, it's still possible to go back to stealth after going into combat against a group. It is also worth noting that enemy behavior is greatly affected by time of day and disguises. From 9 PM to 4 AM, the 80-degree enemy FOV loses 90% of its range. This makes enemies practically blind, so you can crouch around them and they won't react to you. Although when you commit hostile actions like assassinating someone, they will notice it regardless of the line of sight debuff. But using the Storm Veil skill to hide yourself and assassinate enemies mitigate this effect. Disguises are also useful in affecting enemy behavior as it prevents them from detecting you in plain sight. However, disguises will only work if you have the full set. So for example, the Black Bear disguise is a 3-piece set. Equipping all 3 will allow you to walk around Black Bear camps without them becoming hostile. However, if you stay still for too long, especially around the officers or stronger version of the enemies, they do end up seeing through your disguise. So it's best to move around. Personally, I prefer to still crouch and sneak around even with a full disguise just to be safe. Bumping an enemy NPC, doing assassinations within enemy vision, or simply attacking the air will break the disguise. Note also that disguises work only on their respective faction. So a Bleed Bandit disguise will only work against Bleed Bandits, and the Inquisitor disguise will only work on Inquisitors. So it is necessary to gather up all disguise pieces if you want to use this mechanic. However, from my experience, some disguise pieces may require some grinding. This is because they are random drops from enemies and have like a 10% chance or something to drop. So grinding the random drops may be necessary if you want to use certain disguises. While most disguises are for enemy factions, some are used for hunting, like the Bear and Deer Mask and the Shadow Leaf set. If you want to check if you have a full disguise set, simply go to your inventory and press the status button. There you will see a counter that will show if you have a full disguise set. Assassinations in Crimson Desert work similarly to any other game. You approach an unaware enemy and then press the assassinate button to execute. Here though, you don't even need to crouch. As long as an enemy is unaware of you and you're standing beside them, you can assassinate them. You also need a dagger to do an assassination, which is given to you by default. Now, assassination on its own is pretty meh. Enemies tend to be in groups, so unless it's nighttime, they'll see you coming. So if you want to perform assassinations effectively, you'll have to use a combination of tools and abilities. As I've already mentioned, a full disguise set will be your best bet to close the distance and assassinate enemies. However, this alone will only allow you to assassinate one enemy and get the attention of the rest. If you want to do assassinations non-stop, you will want to acquire the Storm Veil skill. This skill is basically a smoke bomb that allows you to assassinate affected enemies. The skill works by activating it through the skill Wind Element button, number 4 on mouse and key, which will release a smoke bomb and stun nearby enemies. These enemies will be susceptible to an assassination regardless if they are fighting you in combat or was fully unaware of you. It's a powerful skill against standard enemies since you can use it repeatedly and stun them. It also hides you, so you can assassinate enemies even when a nearby enemy group is facing you. This is very useful, especially at night when enemy vision is low. However, the problem with this skill is in acquiring it. You see, currently you can only acquire this skill after Chapter 8, which is more than halfway of the main story. What's more, it's in an optional area called the Riddle Square, which is through the Spire of Clockwork. The Spire of Clockwork only unlocks after Chapter 8, hence that specific requirement. Once you pass through the Spire, you get to the Riddle Square and have to complete that puzzle. Once you complete it, the skill unlocks. If you want my advice, if you really want to feel like an assassin or just want to have a nice stealth option, consider pushing through the story up to the end of Chapter 8. Personally, I only got this skill after like 140 hours. And at that time, I still had a lot to do in Pyloon and Deminis, which are the main settings of Chapter 7 and 8. Then once you have the skill, just go to town with stealth assassinations during the side quests in those regions. Aside from the Stormveil skill, there are also sleep arrows that you can get in Pyloon. I believe you can unlock the sleep arrow dispatch mission after finishing Chapter 7. In my experience, I noticed that I was able to do the dispatch mission after finishing Chapter 7. I didn't even have to do any faction quests for the Lonely faction, which is where you create sleep arrows. Although I'm not sure if this is a bug or doing quests for that faction allows you to unlock the sleep arrows earlier than the end of Chapter 7. Anyway, sleep arrows are basically what they sound like. Arrows that make enemies go to sleep. You simply equip the arrow and an enemy you hit will fall asleep. The sleep arrow impact is also somewhat of an AoE, so if enemies are close together, you can put them to sleep with just one arrow. From my testing, enemies stay asleep for 15 seconds. They can wake up earlier if you attack them or they get hit by any other object, like a random breaking barrel or something. Now, previous to a recent patch, we could assassinate sleeping enemies. This made the sleep arrows powerful since it can act as an alternative for the Stormveil skill. You can use focus shot to put a group to sleep and then assassinate them as they doze off. However, after the 1.04 patch, it does seem that Pearl Abyss removed the ability to assassinate sleeping enemies. I don't know if it's a bug or an intended debuff for the sleep arrow. Because of this, I've been using the sleep arrow together with the Stormveil to execute group stealth takedowns. Note that you can also use sleep arrows against small and medium animals. However, against bears, they don't seem to have any effect. Speaking of projectiles, using bows and guns may be a way to perform silent kills. If you have enough range damage, it is possible to take out a small group with a focus shot. However, from my limited testing with this, sometimes nearby groups of enemies do react to the gunshot and will start rushing you. So this may very well be a situational option. Lastly, the Winch ability, which is like a hook that pulls an enemy to you, has proven as a very good stealth ability. I like to use it to pull away enemies from their groups and kill them with either a follow-up grapple move or Stormveil assassinations. If you are far away from the group, you can pull an enemy without others noticing. What's funny is that you can even pull someone who is face to face with another enemy. However, the trick to remain stealthy with this is to make sure you kill your target fast. If you decide to use wrestling moves as follow-ups, you'll need to kill them with 1 or 2 moves, otherwise the nearby NPCs will start to react. Now, if you've already unlocked the Stormveil skill, then that would be the safest move to use after pulling an enemy to you. It will hide your assassination, and if you're wearing a disguise, you'll even be able to get away with taking out whole groups within enemy camps. And so that's it. That's everything I learned about stealth in Crimson Desert.